Hey everyone, I'm really happy to be back. I just got back from being in Japan for 14 days. It was honestly the time of my life. I had the best time ever. It was such a culture shock, but in the best way ever. I really felt like a fish out of water, and that's totally feelings that I look for and that I aspire to have. I feel like those are the moments in life that I grow, that I become more of the person that I'm supposed to. So this video is going to have everything that you need to know in order to really have that type of fun trip in Japan. Again, going to Japan has really been a lifelong dream of mine. I can think of like early college being like, I can't wait to go to Japan. And honestly, it had its ups and downs. There were challenges. I had good times. I had like, I wouldn't say scary times, but moments of growth. And overall, it was just a really great experience. I'm going to go over transportation, think planes, trains, taxis, what you need in order to get from point A to point Z. I'm going to go over packing, what to take, what not to take, what to leave at home, what to buy there. I'm going to go over the places I was at. I'm going to go over the things I did there. I'm going to go over the hotels I stayed at. I'm going to go over shopping, where to go, again, what to get. I'm going to go over food and just overall customs and culture. And then I think with all that information, you will be more than ready to go. Again, online, you see so many videos about Japan, and I think it's just probably the algorithm. When you're already going to do something, it feeds it to you more. But it also all feels so disjointed and segmented. I really wanted a one-stop place where you could really get all your information for all things Japan, all things Tokyo. And this video will really help you and prepare you to have the best trip that you can possibly have. But I also want to disclaimer that I think part of a trip is what I said earlier, feeling like a fish out of water, taking yourself in a comfortable position and putting yourself in uncomfortable positions. That's where you really learn. And yes, do all these things, prepare as much as possible. But I think part of it is just figuring it out. What hiccups do you come across along the way? Where do you kind of mess up? Where are things a little bit hard? I think you want to look for those moments. Those moments are super important too. So of course, Japan is a very safe, very fun, very amazing country to visit. And you're not going to really hopefully come into any too much of serious problems. But I think a little challenge, a little hoop here and there is not a bad thing. So rest easy. It's really easy to navigate yourself in Japan. It's going to be a fun trip. So I'm looking forward to whoever is going to watch this video and eventually go. You're going to have a great time. So a little bit of just background information. I'm located in the US. I flew out of California, specifically San Francisco. I arrived in Tokyo, specifically Narita. I went in January time, which is also their winter. And I went in 2025, this year that I'm recording and posting this video. This is a conversion rate, like roughly at this moment in time. Every 1,000 yen right now is $6.50. I think when I went, it was like $6.25. So between $6 and $7 is 1,000 yen. Let's start off with transportation. First of all, I booked everything, most things about 3 months ahead of time. I think that's a really good marker to book things. Hotels, you can book way ahead in advance because you pay when you get there. And I chose Zip Airline to fly out of. Zip Airline is a Japanese airline. Overall, I had a really comfortable, cozy experience on the way there. So from SF to Tokyo, which is an 11-hour flight, I got a flat, which is their first class. And on the way back, I just got a regular economy seat, which was 9 hours. So my thought process was that I would rather arrive to Tokyo feeling really refreshed, really rested, and ready to just sort of hit the road and pound the pavement and do my thing. They're 18 hours ahead of US California time, PST. So I left San Francisco around like 4 p.m., for example, Wednesday. And then I arrived like 8 p.m. the following day. It made a lot of sense to just like kind of stay awake the whole flight, not sleep, and so that I could be really tired and then sleep when I got there. So I felt like honestly the first 2 days I was really able to easily acclimate and get through things. So they describe Zip Airline as a budget airline, but honestly I had a great experience. It was my first time flying first class, and now ever since then, especially on my way back, I was like, how could anyone ever do this again? I'm like, this is completely, it almost feels inhumane to make people fly economy. I know maybe that's crazy to say, but I'm just like, I think people who pay economy, who also end up having to pay a lot of the time too, we deserve a little bit more comfort sometimes too. Like, especially just comparing the two experiences. In economy, I was so shoulder to shoulder, literally breathing the person's air next to me, like hoping and praying that the flight would be empty, but it wasn't. My flat flight was like, ooh, I could have been on the flight for like 3 or 4 more hours. Like, I was literally able to lay down horizontally the whole time. The service was great. They were super attentive. The flight doesn't have like any built-in entertainment system, so whatever you bring is your entertainment system because they provide Wi-Fi for free. I brought my iPad and I was basically able to just watch everything on my iPad and basically have like my own little tiny TV, which was super comfortable and made the time pass by really easily. I watched TV, you know, all the random things. You will also order from that device, so anything that you want brought to you will be ordered from there. There's actually a lot of cool Japanese snacks there, so if you're feeling peckish, I would wait to get some snacks there because at the airport they can be expensive, and they were significantly cheaper buying on the plane because you're paying in yen. So a water bottle on the airport is like $12. On the plane it was like $6, and same for all the snacks and stuff. It was a lot cheaper. But if you're super hungry, I would obviously bring something on the plane. But a part of the ticket, it includes a meal for the flat. So if you buy first class, you don't pay for your meal. The first class flight came with a little care package. You got like slippers, a little blanket, a little neck pillow, and a little eye mask. It was honestly super cute. I felt so well taken care of. Again, the service was great. You have like multiple USB cords that you can plug in your electronic devices into. I was like so fully charged the whole time, so it was amazing. My flight for the way there was $1,999.30. And for the way back, it was $356.52. So my total was $2,355.82. So as you can see, I could have probably gotten there way cheaper, but I was just like, okay, it's like an affordable time to go, which January they say is a slower season to go. So I was just like, let me splurge a little bit on my flight. I want to experience what this is like. And honestly, I feel like any international flight I go on, I'll at least try to make one of the legs like a upgraded first class seat because it's just so comfortable. Like, you just arrive feeling like, oh my God, nothing happened. Like, time just passed. Whereas like on my flight back, I was just like a sweaty gremlin. Like, oh my God, get me off of this flight. Like, I need to get off. So as soon as you land or before you land, you're going to want to download like Klook and the Go app. Klook is like TripAdvisor. It's a travel app. There you can like book various different activities and transportation. The Go app is very much like Uber. Although Japan also does have Uber, the Go app essentially requests a taxi to come pick you up. And I mostly just use the Go app just because that's what everyone else was using. It seemed more readily available. And I just wanted to sort of just use whatever the other Japanese people were using. So I didn't even bother trying to order anything on Uber. Anytime I needed a taxi, I ordered it on the Go app, or I just hailed one down, honestly. So when you arrive in Japan, and if you're arriving in Tokyo, I think from what I know, there's 2 places that you can arrive. You can arrive in Narita or Haneda. Narita is about an hour away, whether it's by train or by car. It's actually the same thing. And Haneda is actually like right within Tokyo. I think it's like 20 minutes away from central Tokyo. People arrive in Narita because it tends to be the cheaper option. However, you do have to, again, get yourself to central Tokyo if you're not staying nearby. And people will arrive in Haneda because it's more convenient. But again, I think it tends to be a little bit more expensive to arrive there. I think for me, one of the most stressful parts of traveling is like arriving to the airport and not knowing what your travel accommodations are going to be like. Especially in the States, I've had so many situations where I was arriving somewhere and like Ubers were taking so long and like it was just so stressful. I was like, am I going to get stuck at the airport? You end up waiting a long time. So what I did in order to prevent that, I booked a driver through the Klook app. By the time I got to the airport and got through customs and everything, I had a driver waiting for me, ready to take me to my airport. You know, and they had messaged me the day before on WhatsApp. And like while I was on the plane, they were just like, okay, we're coming at this time. And like when I was getting off, I was like communicating with them through WhatsApp. And it just made me feel so comfortable and taken care of that I wasn't going to have to immediately, as soon as I arrive into a foreign country that I've never been to, figure out their public transportation or figure out how I'm going to get to where I'm going. I love knowing that as soon as I arrived, I already figured that part out and I was going to be like escorted to my location. From Narita, you could probably get a taxi you could book a car or you can take the Narita Express. The Narita Express is the bullet train from the airport to central Tokyo. I chose not to do that because I was just like, for the reasons I said, I don't want to arrive in a new country and try to figure out the train system and like already kind of be in like a daze. And like, I want to start my trip off comfortable, cozy, and then the challenges can come later on. So if that's it was $80 to book that. So if that's within your budget, I would highly recommend getting a car book because it just was like so nice. It took away one extra thing I had to think about. And I just focused on having a comfortable flight and getting out of the airport. As soon as you land in Japan, I have an iPhone, so I'm sure Androids do this too, but for iPhones, they're going to prompt you to download the Suica app. I actually just ignored this, which I shouldn't have. You're going to want to download that right away. It's basically like Apple Pay. You just like double click your phone and then you pay with that. That's how you're going to get around in Tokyo. It's for all the public transportation. So that's any trains, any buses. You're going to be using the Suica app. So you're going to be prompted to download that. And you're going to download that right away. Then from there, you can just add money directly from cards that you have added to your wallet. In the beginning of my trip, I added like 5,000 yen, which is about, I don't know, $35. And that lasted me like a whole week and 2 days. And then to supplement that, I added like 2,000 yen. And that lasted me the rest of my trip, minus the bullet train back to the airport. Another thing I recommend transportation wise is like post the first day you get there. So you arrive at night. Take the first half of the next day to sort of just get lost in the train system. Just figure it out. I didn't plan on like doing that, but just in your mind, don't make the number one thing you want to do like post arriving. Maybe make it more down your schedule, because it just takes you a second to figure out things, like figure out customs, what lines to get, how to get in places. Plan for like half a day to really figure out the train system. And for navigating and also just getting on and off the trains and figuring out directions, you're going to want to use Google Maps. Google Maps has a live feed of the different trains, so that's super awesome. You're able to see when things are coming. It also shows you which entrances to enter the train stations in. So like say the train station is labeled B12, it'll tell you like get in B12, and you'll see on the station like, okay, this is B12. You're like, no, like, okay, that's the one I'm getting in for. Also on Google Maps, it'll tell you what platform you're on. So like say you're on platform 2, you can see that in the station too. So that'll signal to you that you're on the right way. So I definitely wouldn't be able to make it in Japan without Google Maps. So you're definitely going to want to download that. And honestly, it was a little bit challenging for me to figure out the train system at first. And I'm not going to try to explain it here, but just know there's train stations. They're listed in Japanese and English. Every train station has a number associated with it and a color. Every train has a color associated with it. And then when you get on a train, you just want to make sure that you're either ascending or descending to the number that you're trying to get to, or else you're going in the wrong direction. But again, as long as you're following Google Maps, getting on the right platform, entering in through the right exit or entrance of the station, you should be fine. And the trains are actually pretty modernized. There will be a live feed of like where you are on the track and where you're going. So you'll be able to quickly see if you're on the wrong train. But I would recommend just going somewhere casually, like, or like not actually trying to go somewhere. Just get on the train, get off the train, figure out how to do that first, and then try to go somewhere. That's kind of the steps I would take. I booked a car from airport to first location. However, I knew that like by the time I was ending my trip, I would probably have the stations and the subways pretty figured out. And if not, I could probably easily figure transportation there. So I was pretty much right on that. On the way back, I took the bullet train from Shinjuku to Narita, the Narita Express. I was not able to buy the tickets online. Sometimes payments are funny and they only let you pay with certain apps that aren't available in America and that you need like a bank account or something else for. So I actually had to go into the Shinjuku station and pretty easily just tell them that I want to get on the Narita Express and bought my ticket that way. And I did that the night before so that when I woke up, I already had my ticket. I knew exactly where I was going and I was able to just quickly and easily get on the train. Okay, packing. I was just like, oh my God, I'm going to be so far away from home. I'm going to be gone for 2 weeks. I need to bring everything and every item that I might need. But then I was just like, you know what? I'd rather have less things and buy what I need out there than be overpacked. So that's what I would recommend to you. Again, I went in January and it was actually quite cold. Not like freezing cold and no snow in Tokyo itself. But if I wasn't without my my thermals on my bottom and my top, then I was actually freezing cold. So I recommend just any thermal that you can get it, because it's going to be super essential for winter time. And again, I just brought like literally 4 pairs of pants, like 4 or 5 tops, and then like 2 or 3 like really big warm jackets. I think just 2 actually, and only 1 pair of shoes. I just repeated my outfits and mix and match them. And the first hotel I was at had a washer and dryer, and I feel like that's pretty common for hotels in Tokyo. So before I left that hotel, I washed all my clothes, which was like midway through my trip. So that just like lasted me the rest of the time in Japan. Again, you're going to be from city to city in Japan. Likely you're going to be just like walking a lot and like traveling between places. I didn't just want to be carrying so many things. You're going to also want to buy a lot of stuff. So I would recommend packing light, making as much space as possible, and just mixing and matching the outfits. I will say Japanese people are extremely stylish, so I was kind of sad to be like, I'm in this like frumpy not frumpy, but I'm just like in the same clothes every day, and they're not that cool or interesting. But that's like one of the sacrifices I had to make in order to have a really good time. Japan also has like a courier system between hotels where you can send your luggage from one hotel to the next. You're just going to want to follow up with the concierge at your hotel to ensure that you're getting it done in enough timing. I inquired one time, and it was like later in the day, and I was leaving the following day, and they're like, oh, you actually have to get it in by this time in order for it to make it to you in time. I guess you could just have them send it still, and you just not care about it being there on time, or maybe they can't hold on to it if you're not there. But anyways, there's a timing issue that you need to accommodate for. So make sure you follow up with your hotel to see what that is if you want to send forward your luggage and stuff. I never did too. I just felt protective over my luggage, and not that they would do anything, but I had like gifts in it and stuff. So I just wanted to be around my stuff. And I felt like I had like a smaller medium luggage and then a big black one that I bought there. That was obviously not ideal, and it was a bit of a hindrance, but it wasn't too annoying to like travel between locations with that, because you're only really traveling with your stuff when you're going from your one hotel to the next. And again, as I mentioned, I actually got a second luggage in Japan. I already kind of was in the market for one. Mine was kind of broken. It's a little small. So I knew going to Japan, like that was another motivating factor to pack light. I was like, okay, I'm probably going to buy some stuff there, and I'm probably going to likely buy another luggage there. So just keep that in mind. You're going to want to buy a lot of things, and space gets taken up quickly. So I got a second luggage, as I mentioned before, and I actually went to go buy it at Ginza, which was, in my opinion, a pretty affordable place. I noticed while I was out there that like, whoa, luggage could get pretty expensive. So I got kind of intimidated with like, I already got all this stuff. I need something to take it in. But luckily, just with a little bit of internet sleuthing, I was able to locate a place, Ginza, that was like pretty quick and pretty affordable. So if you're in that Ginza area in Tokyo, I would definitely recommend going there and buying yourself a luggage. So now I'm going to go into the places that I stayed. So the sequence of my trip went like this. I arrived in Tokyo. I stayed in Ginza. From Ginza, I went to Kyoto. From Kyoto, I went to Osaka for 1 day. Osaka back to Kyoto, stayed in Kyoto. And then from Kyoto, I went back to Tokyo, stayed in Shinjuku. And then from Shinjuku, I left back to the US. I'm going to talk about every neighborhood. So Ginza is very much a very commercialized area. It's what you think when you think of a big city. Tall skyscrapers, a lot of people walking around and with briefcases and like their work clothes, a lot of luxury stores. I was actually surprised by all the luxury storefronts that were available. Like I was surprised to see like Loewe and Bottega Veneta. Yeah, it gives very much like Midtown New York, or like if you're from the Bay, it gives like Santana Row, or like Rodeo Drive in LA, or in Mexico City, Polanco. It's the sister neighborhood to all those neighborhoods I just mentioned. And I wanted to arrive somewhere that felt as familiar as possible. And so what's familiar to Americans, like commercialization and like stores that you know, I didn't want to feel too much culture shock. And I very much felt that Ginza was that place. I felt like I could understand the vibe. I kind of could quickly find out what to do and where to go, and it was just really easy to navigate for the most part. A lot of families in Ginza, it's also super foreigner friendly, so it seems like a lot of foreigners are there kind of just like walking around, being with their families. People are fitted, dressed down, like in their Louis Vuitton, Gucci. I'm like, people are labeled down there. It was a little bit intimidating because I'm just here in my thrifted clothes, but I think that's part of the vibe of being in Ginza. People kind of want to flex what they have, and good for them. If you got it like that, good for you. Tokyo and Japan as a country and society is very quiet, but I've noticed that Ginza very much so, and it was like very much so about following the culture, and very much so like no one is really diverting from what you expect a Japanese person or Japanese culture to do. So it was really interesting to be really enveloped in that. Like this next thing really surprised me. Like I would walk around a lot of the time with my headphones, like listening to music, just kind of walking around, taking in everything, like really trying to get to know the space and just like appreciating where I'm at. One moment it dawned on me to just like take off my headphones, like whatever, just to like hear what was going on. It was like nearing nighttime, and to my utter shock, it was like not just quiet, but like completely silent. Like it made me insecure about like what I was doing. I was like, is my music too loud? Am I breathing too heavily to be around here? It was seriously that silent. It was jarring at first because it's like, I've been to New York and I've been like, it's never quiet there. Even where I live now, I'm like, it's not nearly the size of Tokyo, but it's never quiet here. So I was just like, whoa, like, how could a place with so many people, so much going on, literally be silent? Like if I drop something, they would notice. At first it was jarring, and I'm like a loudmouth too, so it was like kind of difficult to understand or like integrate into that. But then after a while, I feel like Tokyo can swallow you up and then spit you back out. So like those moments of silence are like very much appreciated, like especially like on the train, or you know, anytime you catch a moment to yourself or like just a moment to take a break, you're like, wow, like everything's really quiet. Like I can appreciate that I'm taking a break. And like, yeah, the city has a lot of hustle and bustle, and it's a lot of craziness to just kind of do one thing, but let me appreciate this quiet time. So I grew to like the silence and quietness. I don't know if I could live like that, but it was pleasant and it was very relaxing. I would definitely recommend Ginza for any first timer coming to Japan or going to Tokyo, because it's very centrally located. It's super family friendly. It's like a really gentle way to sort of integrate you into your trip. The nightlife is actually kind of quiet, at least when I went. After a certain time, like I mentioned earlier, it's like completely silent. So there's something really safe and comfortable about that. It's also really safe. I actually think most places in Japan are like super safe, especially for tourists. I don't know, I saw a lot of women walking alone by themselves. It felt like a place where you could really just sort of like let go and not feel so in danger. But that's just from my male presenting perspective. I'm sure women probably feel a lot of different, or other people of color might feel differently, because that's just life. In Ginza, I stayed at the Hotel Quintessa, and there's honestly not much to say about this place. It was very basic hotel, but overall hotels in Tokyo are very small. Some Americans probably will call them tiny. I know I definitely seen a lot of reviews where people were shocked by the size, but that's just how it is out there. So you just have to get used to it, or book more rooms, or a higher premium room than you think you might need if you really feel like you need the space. So for 6 nights, I paid $1,100 at the Quintessa Hotel. I would actually recommend the Akasaka neighborhood. It felt more authentically Japanese, whereas Ginza feels super tourist trappy, which is cool. And sort of like, if you're going to be a tourist, might as well stay with other tourists. Next hotel I stayed in Tokyo, but not the next hotel in the sequence of my trip, was in Shinjuku. Now, Shinjuku is really known for its nightlife, and honestly, like right away, I didn't really enjoy my stay there that much. It felt like too nightlifey, and I am a nightlife person. And in nightlife in Tokyo, where you are staying is where you're probably going to go out, because all the transportation, even the taxis, stop running around like 12:31, and people don't start going out in Tokyo till like 12 a.m. So where you are is where you're going to go out. I felt like Shinjuku felt too touristy, too tourist trappy. It's like something you'll go do for a day, but like to stay for an extended period of time is only if like you're going to be like raging and going out. And I still had a decent time, but I just wouldn't stay there again for an extended period of time. But it's definitely worth visiting for one day, because the Harajuku neighborhood is right there. But I didn't really feel that drawn to Shinjuku. I'm definitely more a Shibuya girl myself. I just definitely saw myself there more aligned with what people were doing there. But it was nice to going out, and I did go out once, and it was a lot of fun. But it just was the middle of January. It was hella cold. So I feel like nightlife wasn't really what it could be, but I'm grateful for the opportunity of going. But one thing I will say is the electronic music was super poppin'. It was just a random Thursday night. The DJs that were playing some lit ass electronic music. So that was pretty cool. The place I went to was pretty fun. There wasn't like a dress code. They just like let me in. I came pretty early though, but I stayed to like 1 or 2 and it didn't really increase in volume. I think again, because of the time of year and the day as well. And for some reason there were like drag queens there, even though it was a straight bar, and they were like handing out free shots, but I felt like the shots were super watered down. So it just seems like some sort of marketing tactic to like make you think like, whoa, they get free shots, but it really isn't that much alcohol in it. But nonetheless, I had a great time. It was definitely more men than girls, though I will notice if that's something you care about. The gay district is also there too. I actually didn't even go out in there because by the time I was like gonna go out, I was just like too cold, and the gay district is like a lot of like bar hopping, and I just was like, I'm not really in the mood to go from place to place, especially in the dead of night in the middle of winter in Tokyo. I was just like, I'm not really feeling that. I think next time I'll try to do it more, but I just wasn't super interested in doing it this time at all. But yeah, the gay neighborhood is in there, and it seems like the nightlife would be super fun and foreigner friendly, but I didn't do any of it. They also have a lesbian bar called the Golden Finger. That's pretty cool too for all the lesbians out there, I think. And some days they only do women allowed, so that's also really cool. I love them for doing that. And Shinjuku is also where the red light neighborhood is in. So it was really an interesting dichotomy because we were in the red light neighborhood, but there was also a lot of families, and I think it just goes unnoticed for most people, honestly, because I think a lot of people are foreigners there. And I also learned about another thing, which was touts, basically scammers. So what they'll do is they mainly target foreigners on vacation, and they'll tell you like, hey, I'm going to take you out. We're going to have the best night ever. Everything's going to be on us. It'll be super cheap or free. But then they get you there, they make you drink, and then they charge you up the ass for everything. They like quadruple, triple charge you, and they like coerce you into paying, even though like that's not what you agreed with. So I think that also added to the why I didn't like Shinjuku's, because I felt like I was avoiding these scammers because I was like, oh, they won't be there, but they are there and they're prevalent. And it's interesting because it's mostly other foreign people trying to scam other foreign people, but like you just have to be like bullet to wherever you're going, like ignore them. One of my tactics was like no inglés, so I act like I didn't know. But yeah, it was just too much, too scammy, too seedy, and not even in that serious of a way. Like I just was not in the mood for it, and I just wanted to kind of be in my own vibe, and I hated feeling like in order to go discover my neighborhood I had to like go dip and dodge. I didn't really like that. But if you're in for like a night out and you want to get crazy, I think that's the neighborhood for you. I wasn't in that headspace for the time I was there. I stayed at the Hotel Glacier, which is like central Shinjuku, so it was pretty central to anything in Shinjuku. It was super family friendly, which again is like interesting because we're in the middle of such craziness. But I think they avoid anyone who does look Asian or Japanese. They only really target foreigners. 3 nights was $880. I also went to Kyoto, which used to be the capital of Japan for like I think 1,000 years until Tokyo became the capital. And in Kyoto, you definitely get more of a traditional, serene, calm vibe. It's still very much a bustling city with a lot going on in terms of like food and nightlife, but there's definitely a more chill, traditional air. Like if I was a straight, skinny Japanese man or woman, I would live in Kyoto just because I feel like this is like the Japanese experience that I want. There's a lot more nature stuff going on. Again, there's more shrines and more traditional neighborhoods, which are really fun to explore, which I'll get into later. Yeah, it was definitely more of a calm, serene experience where I was just like not necessarily interested in doing one thing or another, but I definitely explored a lot of cultural sites and nature sites, which really was in strong contrast to what I was doing in Tokyo, which I felt like was like just being in the future and like doing all that kind of stuff. But for me, honestly, and I'm a little ashamed to say this, Kyoto was a lot about my hotel stay. I had such a wonderful experience at my hotel. The care that I got was just so amazing and so top notch. They were just so like invested in making sure I had a good time and that I was comfortable. I stayed at the 1000 Kyoto, which is essentially on the Kyoto station. So when you take the Shinkansen, which I did from Tokyo to Kyoto, that's the bullet train. Essentially, as soon as you get out and turn right, the hotel's right here. It's a little bit unassuming. You wouldn't really think it's there unless you're going there. But once you enter, it's very spa-like. Like the scent of eucalyptus hits you right away. You enter through this tunnel and immediately you see like this really beautiful airy art installation, which is really amazing. And like to your right is like this huge staircase, which then becomes the art installation. So that was really cool. This room was actually huge. It was like almost as big as this apartment, like if not bigger. I mean, I'm probably not bigger than this apartment, but it was pretty big. I felt so cozy. I felt at home there. I definitely knew that I wanted like a home away from home, a really bougie hotel experience. And honestly, this hotel gave me that. Like, I didn't mind spending time in my hotel because I was like, this is like, I paid for this. I want to be here. The breakfast, the Western breakfast was so good. So they had like traditional Japanese breakfast and then they had the Western breakfast, which was like more typical American food. And that was really awesome. You have to pay for it, but I think it was only like $25-$30 and it was all you can eat. So that's really cool. So you order something and then like there's food that you can just go pick out till your heart is content, which I definitely did. There's also a spa, Sento. It's not really an onsen. We'll get into this later, but there's like a debate between Onsen and Sento, but it was just essentially a spa that you were able to access with additional payment, but you couldn't have tattoos if you entered. I went in a couple times, and honestly, every single time I went, I was basically alone, which was such an amazing way to end the day. Such a luxury spa experience where you just kind of got to like unwind and do nothing and just like be by yourself. It was really amazing. I would love to go back to that hotel. The only thing I didn't love about it was the location. Like it was on and maybe this is a good location, but it was literally right on the station, so it almost kind of felt like I never left the station, which was good because I was like, as soon as I was ready to go anywhere on the train, I could just hop right on. It was right there, but it never felt like I really entered Kyoto sometimes. So, but I did do a lot of walking and exploring, so I don't know, I didn't discover Kyoto enough as a city to understand if that was the only and best location, or like if I could have done another place and explored another neighborhood then, because a lot of the places I felt like I went to felt really quiet and neighborly, which was cute, but where I stayed felt like, okay, this is where all the action's at. So I'm not sure. And then finally I went to Osaka for a day trip from Kyoto. It was only like 30 minutes on the train, and I didn't do that much of exploring in Osaka. It very much felt like Tokyo's little brother. Like anything you can find in Osaka, you can find in Tokyo. The day I went to Tokyo, there was like a 6.8 earthquake, not in Osaka, but like a lot farther south. And then like before that, I went on a trip to Mount Fuji with a guide, and he was saying that like, yeah, one day there's going to be an earthquake and that's going to be the big one and that's going to blow everyone out of the way. And I was just like, oh my God, this is the earthquake. Of course there's going to be a tsunami when I come, like of course. And when I went to Mexico City, there was also an earthquake, so that was super crazy. So it just kind of put me on an off mood. But as soon as I got there, I kind of just did some mall exploring. I was like a little bit of a mall rat, which was fun. I went to the palace, which is actually really beautiful. You got an amazing view of the whole city, and it was just a really peaceful, serene place to kind of lounge for a little bit and see and like look at some really beautiful architecture. So I had a really good time being at the palace. And then there's like a shopping central with like a really huge Don Quixote, which is like a really popular mall, I guess, kind of. So yeah, I wasn't there that long. I think the only thing I would note of Osaka is like now I would feel comfortable like entering Japan in Osaka. Like if it were cheaper to fly into Osaka, I would definitely enter into Osaka and then like maybe stay there a day and then take the train to either Kyoto and then eventually Tokyo and then fly out of Tokyo. So like I feel more comfortable sort of mix and matching my trip to accommodate my budget now that I'm familiar with Osaka, because I'm pretty sure you can fly directly into Osaka. I stayed at the 1,000 Kyoto for 4 nights and it was $1,200. So here are some standouts from my itinerary and things that like really left a huge impact. So top of the list, number one thing that I did was visit Mount Fuji. If you're in Tokyo, you have to go to Mount Fuji. It was really a spiritual experience for me. I loved the contrast of being in like the hustle and bustle of Tokyo and then taking a 2-hour bus ride and going to Mount Fuji. Again, I actually booked this through Klook. It was cool because I had a ride, but other than that, there was no guidance. There was no information. It was just really someone being there for you, like keeping you on time of a schedule in order for the car to get you back to the station at the right time. So It was nice, but next time I would try to figure out a way to like either stay in near Mount Fuji or like get a car service and someone who can just drive me around to those locations. I don't know. It was nice, and I'm glad I did it, and I would recommend you doing it too, because they take you to all the spots that you need to go to in Mount Fuji. So for those of you who don't know, Mount Fuji is an active volcano in Japan. In the Shinto religion, I think they view, from my understanding from the small things the guide did say, I think they view like a lot of things in nature in like a spiritual way. So I think they see the volcano as like a god, and I can totally see why. It's sort of and it's such an interesting feeling being next to something that's so intimidating but like so beautiful at the same time. Like you're like, whoa, you're a volcano that can like literally kill us all, but you're such a beautiful sight to see. It was a really interesting dynamic. So we went to Oishi Park. We saw the Lawson, which is essentially like a 7-Eleven convenience store. It's getting really popular online, so they make that as a stop, but it just has a beautiful background of Mount Fuji, but a lot of places in that area did too. So it was interesting that one stands out. I think because Lawson is so famously and iconically something Japanese, and then also seeing Mount Fuji in the background, but I digress. At the end of it, we went to like this hot springs place where there was a ton of great shopping. So if you do end up at like someplace that's a hot spring, note that there might be shopping there, and it's really incredible shopping. I think that's where I first got the little bug to like, oh my God, all these things I can get. And then we did the Akurayama Shrine, which was so amazing. This was the part of the trip where I was like, I wouldn't need a guide here because we can just like travel and explore. And I felt a little bit rushed by him, and I would have loved to have spent some more time at the shrine because it was such an incredible view. I literally had to like run to the top in like 15 minutes with my backpack on. It was such a crazy exercise, and then I only got to enjoy it for like a few minutes up there. And the next thing we did was just explore the neighborhood we were already in. So I was just like, I wish he would have told us that we were going to do that, so I could have just been like, oh, I'm just gonna stay up here and enjoy this view longer, which is what I've rather done. But again, I digress. That moment, it'll always be etched in my memory as such like a beautiful, iconic moment. I love seeing it. It was so spiritual, and I felt so like, I don't know, at ease and calmed and relaxed. It was really nice. Next, Tokyo is just a park place. Like there's so many amazing little parks here and there, but honestly, the one that stole my heart was Yoyogi Park. I don't know, there was something so like picturesque and serene and like literally perfect about it. Like if I woke up every day and got to go to that park, I would just have like a perfect life. And it was just really calm, relaxing. I had like a really cute dog park. This is in Shibuya, by the way, and Shibuya is like the neighborhood that I felt like I resonated with the most. I liked being there the most, and it just felt like more up my alley. The people were really cool and fashionable. There was a lot of amazing shopping, great food. It had a great combination of calm and relaxed, but also like there's a little bit of motion going around here. And again, Yoyogi Park, it was also right next to a Verve Coffee, which had the best food and the best coffee I've had the whole time in Tokyo. And I know Verve is like obviously now a global coffee shop, so there's actually one in California, so I definitely need to hit that place back up. But if you're in Shibuya, you have to go to Yoyogi Park. And again, it's like it's nothing special, but I just have an affinity for nature places. And they were doing some construction. I think they were going to integrate some sort of like man-made lake or some sort of water structure. So if you're seeing this in the future and you're visiting there, maybe it's changed a lot now too. But it was just such a calming, grounding place to be. I loved spending time there. I like wrote in my journal a little bit there. I just like kind of relaxed. Yeah, that's Yoyogi Park. And I'm sure there's so many other parks that you can go to that have a similar vibe. I also went to Disney Tokyo, which was like a fun, nostalgic experience. I grew up going to Disneyland in LA, so I had a lot of nostalgia. I hadn't gone in a long time. The Tokyo location reminded me a lot of the LA one. They had like a Toontown. They had like a little Western cowboy town. It was just it was really cute. And my ticket was only $50, 50. I was just like, why not? Like, it'll just be something to do. And if I want to leave, I could. And I actually did only stay there like 2 or 3 hours. I walked around. I did a lot of shopping. Tokyo Disney has a lot of great shopping. Actually, you could spend a couple hours doing that alone. I'm really glad I went even just for that reason. And I brought some stuff back with me. And then the food was mostly fun to look at. It wasn't delicious, but it was like fun to look at. So that added to the experience, honestly. I didn't really feel the need to like wait in line to get on a ride. I just felt like none of the rides looked that cool. And anything I could have ridden there, I could also just ride in LA. So just like, I didn't feel the need to go on the ride, so I didn't. I had left while the parade was starting, so I know that they do like a parade. It was like a New Year's parade too at the time. Initially when I got in, I felt so confused. I'm like, why are people sitting on the ground? But they sit on the ground to like get a good view of the parade ahead of time. But I was just like, whoa, like these people are really dedicated. But yeah, I would honestly really recommend Tokyo Disney. It's definitely something to do. It was only a 20-minute train ride from Ginza. It was only like $50. So I didn't feel that bad about like just basically coming in and entering. And yeah, the line, there was already so many people and I basically came pretty close to opening, but Japanese people are really efficient, especially when it comes to lines. So it felt like I got in and out of there super quickly. Tokyo is also museum central. There's so many museums everywhere. I went to the Tokyo National Museum, and it was so, first of all, such a pretty place to be in that neighborhood. It's right next to a cute little park. And I walked around before because I got there before it opened. And just the location feels like super college campusy. It was just super romantic and just like really serene and calming. So I really liked being in that area generally. And then inside, there was just so many exhibits. You could honestly spend like more than half a day there. There's like 3 huge different buildings with multiple exhibits inside of each of them. And then there's it seems like there's like a rotating exhibit. The one I went to at the time was the Hello Kitty exhibit, which was so cute. I got to see so many different items, so many different treasures, and just learn a lot about Hello Kitty, and just like seeing all these cool different things and the way that Hello Kitty has evolved over time was really interesting. So I honestly regret not booking the Studio Ghibli Museum ahead of time, because I think I would have had such a great time doing that. That you have to book like ahead of time, like a month ahead of time. And I could have done that. And I think I was looking into it, but I was just like, oh, I'll book it more ahead, or closer to the trip. And I didn't. So that's one of my regrets. I wish I would have gone there. I think I would have had such a great time, but something to do when I go back. It was very easy to get tickets to the National Museum online ahead of time, but it seemed really easy the day of too to get tickets there. So I wouldn't worry too much about trying to get tickets, because either whether you get them online or in person, it seemed pretty seamless. And I think it was just like $7 to get in. Again, Tokyo has just so many different temples. I had a great time like exploring all of them. It was just really interesting to see all the different temples and the structure and the architecture. It was really amazing to be in that vibe and space where everyone's kind of like super respectful and calm and serene. I really loved that energy. Again, another itinerary item that was super cool, but I didn't completely finish, was the Red Gate Shrines in Kyoto. I forget what they're actually called, but essentially they're the Red Gate Shrines. It's like this long trail where you follow all these red shrines, and essentially the gates are like when you know where you're entering like a holy place, or like the red shrines are called the Tori Gate. And I think it's like entering a spiritual place. Like a lot of people who are Japanese will bow when they enter and then bow. Japanese is also super spa culture, which I am. There's always a place to either go to a Sento or Onsen. Again, these places can vary on traditionalism depending on location. Some places allow all foreigners with tattoos, and some places are very strict on whether they allow people with tattoos, even very small ones. I never got turned away for any of them. And I have a very small tattoo, but don't be surprised if you get turned away and you can't really do anything about it, because that's just the culture, and you just sort of have to accept that in certain locations tattoos are not acceptable. And in Kyoto specifically too, they have a lot of onsen. So there's like onsens, which are like the natural hot springs, which are like outside, and then there's sentos, which are essentially just like public baths, and then there's like spas. So like those are the 3 categories that you'll have. A lot of people online, you'll see them at onsens, which again have the outside like restorative natural healing aspects to it, but a lot of the sentos claim to do that as well. So again, it's an interesting experience. It's definitely will make you feel the most culture shock out of anything that I did. One of the things that I did that made me feel the most culture shock was just being in that environment, because it does kind of feel like you're entering a space that's so Japanese, that's so not what it almost feels like you shouldn't be there, but not because of anything that's going on and not because of any way they make you feel, but it just feels like, wow, this is super cultural. This is like such a tradition that's passed down from generation to generation. And it's just really interesting to enter that space. And for the sentos and onsens, they're kind of like, because English is very limited, it is kind of like interesting to navigate. You never want to enter with your shoes on. So you'll immediately, as soon as you enter the public space, take your shoes off and probably like like lock them away into a small locker, and then you'll engage with whoever's working there to figure out like what you need to pay with, and then you'll enter another locker room where you'll take off all of your clothes, and then you'll enter whether it's the bath or the onsen, and then you'll be able to use the services that way. Again, in Kyoto, the bamboo forest was really beautiful. It's actually a huge park that's very beautiful. You get a lot of great views there, so I would highly recommend there. A nice escape from all the hustle and bustle of the city vibe. Earlier I mentioned Osaka Castle, really beautiful architecture, rich history. It's kind of a museum itself as well, so I would definitely recommend that. Oh, when I went, this is probably not going to be available when anyone else goes, but the Pokemon exhibit, I was in a mall in Tokyo. I forget what neighborhood I was in, but it was interesting because the mall was connected to the train station, so you never had to leave the building to be in the mall. But the exhibit was a Pokemon exhibit, and it was basically, and I'll insert a lot of pictures and videos, but it was basically creating Pokemon out of unconventional materials. So here you'll see that there's many different like statues and like recreations of Pokemon using in interesting and like artistic ways. And I think it was like a nationally held sponsored competition or something like that, or a Pokemon sponsored competition where they like searched out these artists or engaged with them in order to, and then paid them to do this work, and then they showed it off. It was really cool. I grew up on Pokemon. I'm a huge Pokemon fan, so it was such a amazing, like honestly super fun experience, like so inner child, like not even healing because there's no trauma in that, but they're just like so satisfying for my inner child to like do that. I really will take that with me for the rest of my life. It was such an amazing experience. And sort of in addition to that, but not in the same location, there's like Pokemon stores, which they call Pokemon centers, also in this exhibit was not in Shibuya, but the Pokemon Center is in Shibuya. It's mostly like plushies and toys and buying, but they have one cool like installation, which is like Mewtwo in Pokemon the movie. For the first movie, he's still like in the little like incubation thing, so that was cool to see. And that mall itself has great shopping, so on top of it being the Pokemon Center, it has also great shopping, so a great place to visit. And going back to the Pokemon exhibition with the unconventional materials, in that same mall, there is a really popular exhibition. I'm sure you've seen it all over Instagram and all over online. It's by teamLAB, which I'm sure is this organization. It's called Borderless. It's basically this exhibition that's supposed to be like constantly changing and never the same. It's like a variety of light shows and projections that sort of take you through this maze-like structure, and it's constantly changing and evolving, so you can come back to the same exact physical location that you were, but it will be slightly different because what's being projected on the screen is different. It was actually really cool and super big. It honestly kind of scared me sometimes at moments too, because I was like, what if I get lost in here? Like, how am I going to know how to get out? So there were moments where I was like, oh my God, get me out of here. But it was honestly such a fun experience. I would honestly definitely do it again, because there was one part of the exhibit that was closed. It was super fun. I'll put the price on screen. I kind of forgot how much it was, but that was another highlight of my trip. The Pokemon exhibition and the Borderless teamLAB exhibition were both in the same location, so it was really awesome to just sort of be in one place and do multiple things. So yeah, those were the main highlights of my trip. I'm sure I'm missing so many other things, but I just wanted to highlight those. So now shopping. You're gonna definitely want to shop a lot in Tokyo, which is why earlier in the video I recommend bringing a small suitcase and then buying a bigger one when you get here. The shopping is incredible. There's just so many unique items, so many stores that you didn't even know had storefronts. A lot of luxury shopping if you're into that. One of my biggest takeaways is that in 2025, I actually think it's ending this year sometime soon, is that when I went, you were able to just show your passport and get all the tax taken off of your purchase. I think that is going to be taken away, and not completely tax-free shopping, but instead of being able to get the tax deducted at the store, which is what I was able to do, you'd have to probably go do it at an external location. So if you're going anytime soon, please take advantage of the tax-free shopping. If you were buying big stuff, it didn't feel that much, but it was fun to be like, hey, like I got this at a slight discount, and I appreciate it. It was nice. An iconic Japanese store that I really liked was Beams. There's one in Shinjuku, which is at the basement level of a train station, which I didn't like that much, but there was one that I cannot wait to go back to in Shibuya, And I think Beams characterizes itself as a store in like having a lot of locally made or like Japanese made clothes and items, and there was just so much beautiful art. It is on the more expensive side. Like I got a sweater for my dad that was like $80, but it was just high quality. It was really unique. It was like made by a Japanese designer, so I really love that. What you'll notice, especially if you're coming from America, Western fashion is really influential in Japanese. They have like a lot of common American brands. A lot of what's trendy in Japan right now is also what's trendy in America. So the thrifting didn't feel as fun because it just felt like, whoa, like these are just like a lot of American brands that I could just find at home, and I didn't really want to take up space in my luggage for something that I felt like I could have found at home, especially if something's secondhand. So there is a huge percentile for thrifting, but it's like I felt like it was a lot of American brands or like European brands that I could have also just found back in the States. But again, I can't recommend Beams enough, especially the Shibuya store, which is like 7 stories. So many great items. I should have went back there, but it was towards the end of my trip and I was kind of just like sick of being in the store a little bit. But great store, Beams. And one thing about Japan is the mall culture is alive and well. You're going to want to hit up all the malls you can. The malls will have a variety of things to do, like the exhibitions that I just mentioned. And also a lot of the malls have great food courts, whether it's on the highest couple of levels or on the basement levels. That's usually where the food is. I ate a lot of amazing food in those malls. So I'll put on the screen all the malls I went to that I felt like are really worth it and that I had a really good time at. So food in Japan is really good. And I feel like food is like the last thing I prioritize in Japan, just because I felt like I was going to the next thing, always going to the next thing. And like I was kind of not in a rush, but like sitting down and prioritizing food, especially breakfast, wasn't always the biggest thing because I was like, let me take advantage of my day. So a couple of times I honestly did have breakfast at 7-Eleven, or like I wrapped up my day and I was like, I cannot wait in a line somewhere. I'm going to just eat at 7-Eleven. So a couple of times that happened, and honestly, that was super satisfying anyway. Like I didn't mind eating 7-Eleven food, especially at some points, all I wanted to do was just eat something. So I was just like grateful to be able to do that. I also feel like Japan is like one of those places where you can just kind of run into anywhere or like kind of stumble upon a place and the food is likely going to be very good. There was a lot of times, like I mentioned, I was so desperately hungry that I didn't have time to like contemplate where to go and like ate the exact thing that I wanted at that time. And I just like went into some random sushi restaurant or some random restaurant and just kind of ordered some random things off the plate and had a really good time and with great service. Japan doesn't just have Japanese food, as I'm sure you're not surprised. It has a lot of Asian food, even some like Western food, and a lot of it is really, really good. So don't just limit yourself to eating sushi or just like karaage or like Japanese food or ramen, which obviously is all amazing and delicious. Go ahead and try some Indian food, some Thai food, Vietnamese food, burgers. I had all of that, some desserts, and it was all super yummy. There's no one place that stands out because again, I feel like the next trip I do, I would probably want to prioritize more like an eating experience, whereas this time I was just like kind of going through the motions of like discovering the city, doing all the must-dos, and then like eating when I could. Yeah, I would want to prioritize eating more next time. I would just say this at large about Tokyo and Japan: it benefits you to travel in a smaller group / solo. It was a huge surprise if a restaurant was huge. And again, those would mostly be the food courts that were really big. But if a restaurant was really big, I was like super surprised by that. Finally, customs, culture, how to act. I think people probably online overhype foreigner behavior, in my opinion, like meaning like strictly abiding to certain customs and rules. You're entering a society where you don't know that. So I think Japanese people are really friendly and polite, so they don't expect you to always do the right thing and act as a Japanese person who has grown up there, because you're simply not that. You are a foreigner, so you will act as a foreigner does. Sometimes you'll do something snobbishly or not correctly, but I think that's excused if you're seen to be wanting to be respectful, if you're seen as like trying to do the thing. But of course, sometimes you're just gonna be a bumbling idiot, and that's just how it is. And I find that Japanese people are really generous, super friendly, and like willing to sort of like look past or look over anything that may be like culturally inappropriate to do. But that being said, I do think as a foreigner, especially as an American, you should try your best to sort of acclimate to what the standards of the society are. I feel like, sometimes Americans are like noticeable from a mile away. There's something about us that just like fills the room and like takes up all the space that you're like, oh, that's an American person right there. I don't know. There's just something I could clock about that immediately. I can't really name it, but it's probably the boisterousness, the like entitlement. That's what I could sense an American person from a mile away. So I think being quiet is actually something really important. It's interesting. Some neighborhoods abide by those strict guidelines more than others. I think you just have to feel out the vibe. But honestly, for the most part, like I mentioned earlier, Tokyo is a really quiet, silent place. You won't really notice anyone like yapping on the phone too much, or like definitely not talking on the phone on the train. I think that's disrespectful. I think you should avoid that if possible, because literally no one else is doing it. So like if you're the only one talking, it's very like noticeable, and it causes a great disturbance. So I think that's one of the easiest things to do, and like possibly like you would want to avoid being super loud, because no one is really being that loud. I think generally being clean too. I think beforehand I saw a lot of people talking about like not eating or drinking and walking. I definitely never did that, but I could see walking and drinking not being that noticed, Honestly, I look at it in a different perspective. I love that like you don't walk and eat, because that feels like a rushed experience. I love that if you're going to eat something, you're going to take the time to like sit down and like fully enjoy it. You're not like going to walk and eat it. Yeah, I think that is part of it, but the drinking part I think is more flexible, but definitely I didn't see any people walking and eating, so you probably want to avoid that too. Tipping isn't a part of the culture. A lot of people online say it's disrespectful. I mean, I never even tried to tip, so I didn't see the reaction, but there's no need to tip for restaurants or any sort of service. Again, this caught me off guard too. Driving and walking is on the right side. So I feel like they could tell I was a foreigner, because I always sort of like lean to the left, because in the States we walk on the left and drive on the left. So everything's on the right. So you got to remember that. Japanese people are very orderly. So if there's a line, stay in the line, don't cut in the line. If everyone's going in a certain direction, follow that direction. And it honestly benefits everyone if you keep on just like going in a direction or following the crowd, because it helps everything moves more smoothly and quickly. Again, some onsens and sentos are tattoo unfriendly, but for the most part, culturally, I don't think anyone cares. I definitely saw a lot of tattoos, and especially with foreigners. So I don't think it's that serious to just be walking around with tattoos. There's no need to sort of like feel super hyper aware of your own body in that way. I will say, from a queer perspective, things feel super gendered. Like the guys do this and the girls do that. You know what I mean? Or the guys dress this way and the girls dress that way. Of course, like especially in the Sento, you notice that behavior more because it's more separated. But of course, there's exceptions to that. There's people that are more like on the fringe or whatever, like, or like more alternative, that I really think is super cool. I think, again, don't overthink it. You're a foreigner, so you're going to act like a foreigner. You can't expect to act fully culturally Japanese when you're not. So I think as long as you're being respectful, you're trying your best, you're doing things with a smile, and you're being friendly and you're being respectful as a visitor to these people's country, I think that goes a long way, and I think that doesn't go unnoticed. So you definitely want to try to do that. And if you do that, I think Japanese people really pride themselves in being, or at least are people that are very friendly, very helpful. Like if you need sort of any small thing, especially from the workers, they're more than happy to be very generous with their time and help you navigate the train or give you guidance on any small thing. So again, don't overthink it too much. Sometimes you're going to do something stupid, and that's totally expected. So I hope that was helpful. I had a really fun time creating it. It was really cool to like just like think back on my time and like split it up in different categories. All right, everyone. So that's it. I hope this was super helpful. I really enjoyed making it. It was really fun to think back on my trip in this categorical way where I'm sort of like splitting up in different categories. I hope that you use this as a tool for the next time you visit Japan. And I'm looking forward to using this myself for the next time I go and visit as like a little refresher. And yeah, see you next time. Bye.